name is Crystal Tisch. I'm the Behavior and Training Manager at the Blue Ridge Humane Society. I'm sitting in my living room in my home in Hendersonville, North Carolina with my black and tan Doberman Ludo. Today I want to talk to you about hiking and how to know if your dog is ready for hiking on the public trails. We all know that hiking is wonderful enrichment and it's a great way to bond with your dog. But there's some factors to consider before you pack up to hike the trails with your furry friend. We first want to make sure that the dog is physically ready and consider any limitations they may have. So first, think about your dog's age. If you have a puppy, you want to be sure that you're not doing too strenuous activity or too long of activity. That can be damaging on a puppy's growing bones. Check with your vet about how much activity is appropriate for your puppy. A good rule of thumb is the rule of 5. The rule of 5 states that a puppy should receive 5 minutes of activity per age of month twice a day. So for example, if I had a 4-month-old puppy, they could get 20 minutes of activity twice a day. But that should be on pretty level terrain. If you have an older dog, be aware that they may not tolerate hiking over rough terrain or long hikes. They may have painful joints or arthritis, or they may have lower strength and stamina than they used to have. So manage your hikes by taking shorter hikes or having less difficult terrain, and then be sure that you're taking more frequent water breaks and rest breaks. Even if a dog in the prime of its life, you still need to build up its endurance for long, difficult trails. So start with easy hikes, no longer than an hour, with a gentle incline. And then pay attention to your dog. Do they seem really wiped out? If so, next time maybe take a shorter trail or a less difficult trail. And then be aware that even if your dog is used to hiking in cooler weather, they need to acclimate to the warmer weather. So take shorter hikes or more frequent breaks until your dog is used to the warmer weather. So once we've evaluated our dog's physical condition, we need to consider if they have the appropriate behavior and training for public hiking. Does your dog bark and lunge at other dogs? If so, they may not be appropriate for hiking on public trails. We want to avoid exposure to the dog's triggers while we're working on their reactivity. We do that by controlling the time of day and the exposure to other dogs. Is your dog barking and lunging at people that are passing by? If your dog is fearful of other people, they might not enjoy the exposure to new people that they're going to get at a public park. And if you can't control your dog, they could be a safety risk to other people. You also want to consider if you feel comfortable being your dog's advocate. Do you feel comfortable telling a person to stop if they're approaching your dog and they're uncomfortable? If not, you may not want to take your dog on a public trail. We also want to consider if the dog is fearful of bikes or joggers. If you're not sure, it's a good idea to take your dog to a hiking area that has a lot of space so that you're able to get away and keep people safe and be able to calm your dog down. Some dogs are friendly, but they're barking out of frustration. So if you've got a dog that's just wanting to get to the other dog or get to the people, what we want to work on is their attention and teaching them how to ignore the other dogs and people. If your dog is dog aggressive or dog selective, you may want to avoid public parks. Until we live in a world where people will ask permission before approaching your dog with their dog, it may be a safety risk that you just don't want to take. Has your dog ever been to a busy park? Some dogs get really overwhelmed in the distracting environment. So a good idea is to take your dog to a hike that's a little less busy than some of the larger trails. This way we can kind of gauge and see how comfortable they are with all the stimuli in a public park. And then finally, you want to ask yourself, how are your dog's leash walking skills? Will your dog respond to you if you call their name to come back to you? We need to be sure that we have physical control over our dog if we're going to be hiking in busy public areas. So if your dog pulls really hard, you may want to consider a no-pull harness to help get you better control over them. And you also want to go home and work on your leash walking skills. So to recap, before we hike out on the trails with our dogs, we want to consider the dog's age and physical ability when choosing appropriate hiking trails for length and duration. We want to be sure that our dog can be calm and responsive in the presence of distractions like people and other dogs. We want to be sure that they can walk well on leash and that they'll be responsive to cues. I hope these tips are helpful for helping you to determine if your dog is ready to hike on those public trails. This will ensure a better time for you, your dog, and all the other visitors to the public parks. This video is part of a series on hiking with your dog in public parks.